Hello and welcome to my top 40 of 1971. I painstakingly went through every week of the UK charts in 1971 to compile my own personal top 40. Every song had to enter the UK top 40 in 1971, and that's the only caveat. You may have a different opinion, I'm sure you do. I'd love to hear what you'd have as your number one, your top 5, top 10, etc. Let me know in the comments. I can't play the music in this video, obviously, it wouldn't be allowed, but you can hear the playlist on Spotify, there's a link in the description, and you can hear the radio show of this top 40 on Mixcloud, where you can obviously hear the music. There's also a link to that in the description. So, let's get straight to it. Number 40, Isaac Hayes, theme from Shaft, spent 2 weeks at 4 in December of 1971. Number 39, John Lennon, Power to the People, spent a week at 7 in April of 1971. The Chi-Lites, Give More Power to the People, for God's sake, spent a week at 32, straddling September and October of 71. Then the Tams, I love that song, Hey Girl, Don't Bother Me, spent 3 weeks at number 1, straddling September and October of 1971. Number 36, The Doors, Riders on the Storm, spent a week at 22 in December of 1971. And at number 35, Cat Stevens, Moonshadow, spent a week at 22 in October of 1971. Remember, all these figures are from the UK charts. Number 34, James Taylor, You've Got a Friend, spent 2 weeks at number 4 in October of 1971. And Curved Air, that's the band that Stuart Copeland from The Police was in, Backstreet Love, spent a week at number 4 in September of 71. 32, George Harrison, Bangladesh, spent a week at number 10 in August and September of 1971. And 31, The Move, Chinatown, spent a week at 23 in November of 1971. Into the top 30 now. The Supremes, I believe minus Diana Ross, Nathan Jones, spent 2 weeks at 5 in September. No, I think she was still in the Supremes then, actually. Spent 2 weeks... correct me if I'm wrong. I should have done the research. Oh, yeah, no, I think she was out of the Supremes at this point. Spent 2 weeks at 5 in September, October 1971. Number 29, Neil Diamond, Sweet Caroline, spent 2 weeks at 8, straddling March and April of 1971. That might be higher, but you get sick of hearing it after football matches, so, I get sick of that. Number 28, Tom Jones, She's a Lady, spent a week at 13 in February of 1971. Number 27, a song I didn't know until I was compiling this list, Burundi Stevenson Black. And Burundi Black is a French guy. It's an amazing track. It spent 3 weeks at 31, straddling November and December of 71. Give it a listen. 26, Cher, Gypsies, Tramps and Thieves, spent 2 weeks at 4 in November and December of 1971. 25, The Elgins, Put Yourself in My Place. Actually, this is so... You'd probably think you'll listen to the Supremes when you listen to this. It's an absolutely beautiful Motown-esque soul song. Spent a week at 28, straddling October and November of 1971. Number 24, Paul McCartney, Another Day, spent 2 weeks at 2, straddling March and April of 71. Number 23, Diana Ross, Surrender, spent a week at 10, straddling November and December of 1971. Number 22, Curtis Mayfield, Move On Up, classic, spent a week at 12 in August and September of 71. I don't know why I said classic, they're all classics. 21, The Supremes, Stoned Love, spent 2 weeks at 3 in February of 71. Enter the top 20, Neil Diamond, I Am, I Said, spent a week at 4, straddling May and June of 71. 19, Elton John, Your Song, spent a week at 7 in February of 71. I'm sure I have that in my 1970 extras playlist. I better check that because it shouldn't be there. 18, The Who, Won't Get Fooled Again, spent 2 weeks at 9 in August of 1971. 17, Carole King, It's Too Late, spent a week at 6 in September of 71. 16, Labi Siffre, It Must Be Love, spent a week at 14 in January of 72, but it entered the UK top 40 in 71, so worry ye not. 15, George Harrison, My Sweet Lord, spent 5 weeks at number 1, straddling January, February and March of 1971. Wow. 14, Diana Ross, I'm Still Waiting, spent 4 weeks at number 1 in August and September of 71. Number 13, The Pioneers, Let Your Yeah Be Yeah, spent a week at 5 in September of 71. And number 12, Al Green, the legend, Tired of Being Alone, spent a week at 4 in November of 1971. And 11, T-Rex and Jeepster, spent 5 weeks at number 2, straddling December 71 and January 72. Into the top 10 now. Bruce Ruffin, Rain, spent a week at number 9, straddling May and June of 71. A 9, The Rolling Stones, Street Fighting Man. I know what you're thinking, but it actually was released as a single and it spent a week at 21 in July of 71, even though it's from a few years before. And I couldn't resist but to include it because it's a fantastic song. Number 8, you won't see this guy in many of my lists. Rod Stewart, Maggie May, spent 5 weeks at 1, straddling October and November of 71. And then at number 7, one of my absolute favourite reggae songs, Dave and Ansel Collins, Double Barrel, spent 2 weeks at 1 in April of 71. Number 6, T-Rex, Get It On, spent 4 weeks at number 1 in July and August of 71. Now into the top 5. Carpenters, Superstar, spent a week at 18 in November of 71. Oh, I love that song. Stevie Wonder, We Can Work It Out. I think that's better than the original version by the Beatles. Spent a week at 27, straddling May and June of 71. Number 3, The Rolling Stones, Brown Sugar. Spent 3 weeks at 2 in May and June of 71. Number 2, Slade, Cause I Love You. I might change this list if I were doing it now, but I did this months ago. Spent 4 weeks at number 1, straddling November and December of 71. And at number 1, T-Rex, Hot Love. 6 weeks at number 1, straddling March and April of 71. Of course, T-Rex were the band of this particular period. So there you go, that's my top 40 of 1971. Now, let's take a look at 1971 extras. And the caveat for extras is that the songs weren't top 40 hits in the UK. They may have been in other territories, but they're really just album tracks and songs that I love from 1971 that weren't in the UK top 40. So I'm not going to talk about all of them because obviously I think there's 100 exactly in this list. So let's go through and just point out some of the great songs. You could just look at the list while I'm chatting to you here. There is a playlist of this on Spotify, and I'll leave a link in the description, obviously. This is not in order, but obviously I like the ones at the top more than the ones in the middle, and I like the ones in the middle more than the ones at the bottom. But I try to avoid having songs by the same artist next to each other, or even songs from the same sort of, like I wouldn't have 2 reggae songs together. Watch, I'll probably go down the list and there'll be 2 reggae songs together. And I mentioned in the previous show, I'm a huge fan of Brazilian music in the 70s and reggae music in the 70s. So you're going to be seeing a lot of that. And I seriously advise you to check this playlist out. It is absolutely stonking. There you go, there's the Rolling Stones, Can't You Hear Me Knocking from Sticky Fingers, fantastic song. Number 2, Just Like a Baby by Sly and the Family Stone from There's a Riot Going On. If you haven't heard that album, I seriously suggest you listen to it. It's not the Sly and the Family Stone of the late 60s. Yeah, well, I'm not going to explain it, but it's a very definite sound in that album, which is due to something or other. And then there's Chico Buarque and Cotidiano from the album Construção. Sorry, I do try to do the accent, but it might be ridiculous. It's a fantastic album. A lot of people would consider it to be Chico Buarque's best album. And there's a few songs from that album in this list. David Bowie, Oh You Pretty Things from Hunky Dory. That's a fantastic album. You know it's fantastic. If you're watching this, you probably know most of this music, and so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Stranger Cole, Crying Every Night, These Eyes. Now, it's from an album called Virgin Galore by Uroy. And it's got so many tracks on this album. And there's even a different version of this song from a different artist with the song's called something different as well. And I can't off the top of my head remember, but it's probably in this list. So yeah, when I get there, I'll say, that's the one. Yeah, it's a great song. Next up, Claudia. Now, as I said in the last show, I love Brazilian music, and some of my taste for Brazilian music is verging on the cheesy. I'm sure some people would think this is cheesy. I think it's fantastic. There's a few songs from Claudia in this list. Com Mais de 30, from the album Jesus Cristo. I just think she's some amazing songs. The Beach Boys, Till I Die from Surf's Up. Now, you must have heard this song. It's absolutely gorgeous. Tommy McGee, Come On, is a soul song. Marcos Bae and Garra, or Gaha, because in Brazil they tend to pronounce their R's as H. Anyway, next, Phyllis Dillon, Don't Stay Away. That's another one from that album, Virgin Galore. I'm not sure why there's tracks by other artists on the Uroy album, Virgin Galore, but it is what it is, and that's an amazing song. Next up, Paul McCartney, Linda McCartney, Too Many People. Is that the one that caused John Lennon to get really, really angry? No, is it? I can't remember. No, it's not. It's not. Is it? Oh, I can't remember. Probably isn't, but it might be. You know the one that has made John Lennon write How Do You Sleep? I'm not sure which song it was that inspired that. It's not Too Many People, is it? Oh yes, it is. It is. I just got to the chorus. It is. That's the one that made John Lennon get all angry and miffed. I don't know why. Anyway, next up is Chico Buarque again and Desalento from Construção. Then Harry Nilsson, Get Up. Yeah, Gotta Get Up. You'll know this song. It's from a TV show apparently, from the album Nielsen Schmielsen, which is I think by far his best album. And again, from the album Version Galore, Alton Ellis and the Flames, Ain't That Lovin' You, for more reasons than one. Great album, that is. Then at Claudia again, there she is, Mais Que Perfeito. And then Gene Knight, Mr. Big Stuff. Wilson Simonal, Da Noche na Cama. In the 1971, I mentioned my eyesight isn't the best, and because of where the microphone is, I'm having to look at a distance at the screen, and I mispronounced a couple of these small words like de and na yesterday, so forgive me. Next up, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Sun is Shining. That's the song that inspired that Finley Quay track. What's it called? I can't remember, never mind. Dom Salvador and Abolição and Hey Você. There's some great Brazilian songs in 1971, in the 70s in general, but particularly in 1971. I noticed it, you see. Next up, Sly and the Family Stone again from that album, There's a Riot Going On, You Caught Me Smiling. And then Gil Scott-Heron, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Astrid Gilberto and Stanley Turrentine and Ponteo. That is, oh God, I love Astrid Gilberto. She passed away recently, God rest her soul. Oh, wow. Yeah, I've got an Astrid Gilberto playlist. By the way, on Spotify, if you go to my profile, Cosmo Jones, and well, or look for Feed Your Soul. All my playlists are called Feed Your Soul and then something else. I have other playlists that aren't Feed Your Soul, but that's more for me than you. All the Feed Your Soul ones are for you. I want you to love them. I want you to hear the music I love, and hopefully you'll get a kick out of it. You'll say, "Oh, I've not heard that before. I love that," because I love discovering new music, and as you can hear by my radio shows on Mixcloud. Inner City Blues, Make Me Wanna Holler by Marvin Gaye from the absolutely astonishingly good album What's Going On. And then David Bowie, Cooks from Hunky Dory. I could have had everything from Hunky Dory on here that wasn't in the UK Top 40 because it's such a great album. Next up, there he is again, Construção from the album, Chico Buarque. Then What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. Life's a Gas by T-Rex from Electric Warrior. Great album. Evinha Que Bandeira, another Brazilian artist, obviously. What's Happening, Brother by Marvin Gaye. Then Madalena, Elis Regina, one of my favourite singers. Then The Marvels, Rocksteady. It's the Rocksteady you're thinking of, the one that Aretha Franklin made famous. This is the reggae version, obviously. I think it's, well, there you can see it's from Soul Jazz Records, presents 100% Dynamite Ska Soul. Next up, Antonio Carlos and Jocafi and Você Abuso. Next up, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young from the live album Four-Way Street. That's the Lee Shaw. That's David Crosby at his finest. Next up, Paul and Linda again, Ram On from the album Ram. It's interesting how he got that nickname. You must know how. I won't go into it here, but... Next up, Erasmo Carlos and De Noche na Cama. Alton Ellis, Blackish White. Sergio Ricardo, Conversão do Paz. That's a fantastic song. It makes me laugh because it's in my head right now as I'm saying it. There's a bit where it goes, ba 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 ba. That's the lyric. Next up, T-Rex, Cosmic Dancer. Next up, Claudia again. There she is, Baoba. Version Galore, Uroy and the Melodians. I'm looking out for that song that I told you about that is the same but different song, different title, different vibe. Not sure if that's the one though. Next up, Erasmo Carlos, É Preciso Dar Jeito, Meu Amigo. Then Uroy again, Hookton Lewis, Tom Drunk. That, by the way, that is a version of another song. Now, I can't remember. I wish I'd done the... Because I knew a few weeks ago I could have told you exactly because I was totally reggae crazy. But since then I've been doing other things and I've forgotten a couple of little details. But anyway, next up, Elton John, Razorface from Madman Across the Water. It's a pretty good album. It's not his best, but it's a good album. Some good songs in there. And there's an Elton John Feed Your Soul playlist as well. Actually, there's so many artist specials. I've got top 40s from 1970 to 1991. I've got extras from 1970 to 1991. I've got more from 80 to 91, which is like, for example, 80 tracks from 80 that were in the top 40 but didn't make my top 40. And then I've got a bunch of soul playlists, reggae playlists, blues, jazz, instrumentals, soundtracks, guilty pleasures, lo-fi playlists, artist specials, and that's what I'm talking about. I've got an Elton John, Elton John artist special. Next up, Antonio Carlos and Jocafi again in Cabaluere. Next up, the Wailers and, oh my goodness me, Downpresser. My eyes are failing me. Trio Esperanza, Now Aguento Você. Harry Nilsson, Coconuts, the song from, I think, Reservoir Dogs. Next up, Samba de Orly, again, Chico Buarque from that album that I was telling you about. Again, from Surf's Up, Fuel Flows by the Beach Boys. I mean, this is a period of the Beach Boys' career where they were going downhill. Brian was still writing a few with them, but the 70s was a very low point for the Beach Boys, considering that in 62, 63, 64, 65, they were absolutely at the top of their game. But obviously things changed when Brian sort of departed. Tanya Maria, Madalena. I think there's a version of Madalena higher up in the list by Elis Regina. It's a great song, and both versions are worth hearing. The Kinks, Alcohol, Muswell, from the album Muswell Hillbillies. When I said alcohol, all of a sudden I got the song Alcohol by, what's that band called? Bare Naked Ladies. Yeah, they've got a song called Alcohol, and it's absolutely amazing. But that's from something like 98 or 99, so obviously forget about it. And next up, Ponteo again. Same song earlier on by Elis Regina, now by Eddie Lobo. There's 2 tracks by Elis Regina that are on this list, and the songs are done by other people that are also on this list. I just realised that. David Crosby, Laughing, from his solo album If I Could Only Remember My Name. Next up, Tony Tornado, Me Liberté. Tony Tornado is the Brazilian James Brown, and you'll hear it when you hear this album. It's really very James Brown. Wake the Town, Uroy, Winston Knight, and Tommy McCook. Winston Wright. Sorry, I just knocked the microphone with my big headphones. If you heard a noise there, I apologize. Wake the Town. Now, you know that song, no, Don Penn, no. Well, you know at the beginning it goes, wake the town and tell the people. That's where it comes from. That sample is at the beginning of that song there. So, yeah, that may be why I included it just for that little bit, because it's so very cool. I'm actually going to do a remix of reggae music on my Mixcloud channel, where I play songs, but different versions of songs, and mix them all together. I'm going to try. Next up, Somtres, Take It Easy, My Brother Charlie. That's Georgie Benjor song. East of the River Nile, 1971 version by Augustus Pablo. You know Augustus Pablo. He's the melodica player. That's a brilliant song. That's a brilliant album as well, by the way. Rebel Music, a reggae anthology. That is a fantastic album. Nara Leao, Insensates. She's a singer who was very big in the 60s. Bossa Nova. And then she had something to do with the Tropicalia movement, and that is a very good song. She had a good period at this time. Fussin' and Fightin' by Bob Marley from Essential Marley. Next up, Os Mutantes, Technicolor. Os Mutantes are the Tropicalia band I told you about in the 1970s show. Check them out. Very good. Strange Things by John Holt. It's another great reggae song. Comanche by Georgie Benjor. Don't Cross the Nation by Little Roy. Ella by Elis Regina. East of Underground by Smiling Faces. Great soul song. Transmazonica by Antonio Adolfo and Abrazuca. Next up, O Jornaleiro, again, the Brazilian James Brown, Tony Tornado. How Do You Sleep? There's John Lennon's riposte to Paul McCartney's, what was it called? Too many people. Next up, Rodriguez, Sandrevan Lullaby, Lifestyles. Okay. Next up, Erasmo Carlos again and the Caribe Steel Band, Maria Joana. Next up, What You Gonna Do by the Valdons, Nara Leao again, Meditação. Bob Marley and the Wailers, African Herb Band. Tenha fé, pois amanhã lindo dia vai messed it up. Os Originais de Samba. Weather Report and Eurydice, if that's how it's pronounced. Eurydice, it might be Eurydice. Eurydice. That's Weather Report pre-Jaco Pastorius. You know, Wayne Shorter was one of the main guys in Weather Report, and there's a film coming out about him, which I think is produced by Brad Pitt. So He's a very, very well-respected jazz man, sax player. But yeah, that's a great song. That's a great album, actually. I'm not sure if that's their debut album. It might be. Next up, Claudia again and Gaha. Next up, John Lennon. Oh, my love. Os Mutantes. El Justicero. Next up, Behold, Hugh Roy and Tommy McCook. Next up, Nagaya do Cajueiro, Wilson Simonal. Now, there's a remix of that as well from the noughties, I think. It's a pretty good remix as well. David Crosby's song, With No Words, Trees with No Leaves, from the album, his first solo album, If I Could Only Remember My Name. Sei Lá, by Toquinho and Vinicius de Moraes. I always think of Tom Jobim when I think of Sei Lá because he has a version. Not this year, though. Morning Lake, again, weather report. Tom Zay, Jimmy Hendase. Yikes. Berto Pisano and Jacques Chalmont. Yasmina. Next up, Rosinha de Balença. Rosinha de Balença. And Summertime. Yes, it is that Summertime, the Gershwin song. This is incredible guitar playing. If you've not heard this woman play guitar, wow. I think there's another track from the album on. Yeah, there is further down. Dennis Al Capone. Oh, very good. Upsetter. Next up, Dr. King, The Peaceful Warrior by Archie Shepp. MPB4, Cravo e Canela. MPB is Música Popular Brasileira. Or Brasileiro. Or Brasilia. I don't know what it is. Next up, The Circle and The Minx. Very 60s, very Birds-esque, very cool. Next, Rosinha de Balença again, Asa Branca or Asa Branca. Next up, Baila Chiquiban, Nico Gomez and his Afro Percussion Incorporated. Os Tres Morais and Freo Aerodinamico. There was a version of that song in my 1970 extras by Marcos Bae, who I think composed it. Not sure. Celestial Blues, Gary Bart's new troupe. And then Vinicius de Moraes and Marilia Medalha Toquinho. Tarde em Itapuã. Ula e Georgie by Jean-Pierre Mirouz. Then Calvin Keys, Shonique, then Bolasecci and Bettina. You'll recognize that. That was sampled heavily by... I think it was that... Oh, goodness gracious me. I think it was that album. My goodness me. Oh, never mind. Next up, Calvin Keys again and Gigi. And finally, and I had to put it at the end because look how long it is. 23.5 minutes. Echoes by Pink Floyd from the album Meddle. It's an amazing song, Echoes. And you know what? The funny thing about Pink Floyd, they're very often from especially from Wish You Were Here, and Animals as well in 75 and 77, they have very, very long songs. And you'd think, how can I listen to a song that long? Believe me, you're never bored listening to these long Pink Floyd songs. I don't know how they do it, but you are never bored. Unless you hate Pink Floyd, and then I'm sure you are. Anyway, that's my 1971 Extras playlist. I hope you enjoyed both of those playlists. Well, you might not have listened to them yet, but hope you enjoyed the video. Remember, the links to both playlists are in the description, and the link to the 1971 Top 40 radio show is also in the description. Follow me there on in those places. Subscribe here, hit like, let me know what your favorites of 1971 are, and share it with anyone you know who loves music. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye bye.